This guide to building REST APIs in Next.js 14 goes beyond simple CRUD operations, teaching how to create multiple MongoDB models like users, categories, posts, and comments, while also covering how to protect API routes. You'll get hands-on experience in setting up schemas, building robust APIs, and implementing advanced features such as logging middleware and deployment. In this course, Umair Jamil will help you enhance your Next.js and REST API development skills.
Hello everyone, my name is Umair. I'm a senior software developer. I'm building web applications for over 8 years now. Many people use Next.js for their front-end interactive applications, but in this video, I'm going to teach you how we can build complete backend and build REST APIs using Next.js 14 using app directory structure. So these are the topics I will be covering in this tutorial. First of all, I will be creating a new Next.js 14 project from scratch. After that, I will be explaining you guys what are the different folders and file structure recommended by Next.js in order to create APIs in our project. After that, I'll show you how we can connect to the database. In this case, I will be using MongoDB. After that, I will be creating different models for adding relationship between users, blogs, and the categories and all the relationship happening between these models. For example, a category belongs to one user, a blog belongs to a category as well as users, and more relationship between these models. And this point is going to take a lot of time because we will be creating all the APIs and adding error handling in our APIs. After that, I will show you how we can add filtering, searching, pagination, and all of different these things for blogs if you want to add these features in your front-end applications using these APIs. After that, I will show you how we can protect our APIs using bearer token. It means from the client side, when you will be accessing these APIs, if you don't pass any bearer token, then it will throw an unauthorized error. Then I'll talk about middlewares, how we can add logging or error handling before any execution of the APIs. Finally, I will show you how we can deploy our complete backend in Next.js 14 on Vercel. So during the development of the APIs in this tutorial, I'll keep on testing all of these APIs on Postman. In Postman, we can create collections, folders, and then the requests for the get, post, patch, delete, and put. And I'm going to explain you how we can use Postman in order to test the APIs by adding different URLs, adding authorization, headers, how we can add different body data over here and test that out. So before starting, I just want to tell you guys that I have my personal YouTube channel as well, where I create videos on multiple technologies that includes React, Angular, Node Express, MongoDB, prompt engineering, Docker, CI/CD, Git, GitHub, TypeScript, and all these different topics. And if I go to the playlist, mainly I create videos on Next.js. So this video is mainly for the backend. If you want to learn about front end in Next.js, then I have created all the videos on different topics for you guys in order to become a good Next.js 14 developer. So you can check the link of my channel in the description of this video, and I would really appreciate if you can subscribe my channel as well. So let's get started by creating a new Next.js 14 project. I've opened up VS Code with an empty folder inside it. And now, first of all, we need to verify if we have the latest version of Node and NPM installed in our system. Once we have verified, I'm going to write a command npx create next app at latest dot. I will hit enter. Dot means that I don't want to create a new folder inside my existing open folder in our VS Code. So I'm gonna go with the TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind CSS, source directory no, app router yes, no for customized defaults. So most of these options are related to front end, but I'm gonna be focusing on back end side only. So our project is created. I'm gonna clear the terminal out. So let's see what we have here. This is our main folder app, and it includes all the files and the folders for our APIs for our front end routes. Since I'll be focusing on backend side only, so let's talk about the folders and file structure for the backend. So inside the app directory, first of all, we need to create a new folder API, and everything we will be creating on the backend side should be added within this API folder. And And inside this API folder, we need to create another folder. Let's call it users. And the name of this folder will become the part of the URL for this API. Means that in localhost, we are running the application. It becomes localhost colon 3000/API/users. And it will become an API if we create a file called route.ts inside it. We cannot change the name of this file. It is predefined by Next.js. And inside this route.ts, I'm going to show you by creating a simplest API. So let's create export const get. This is going to be a get request. We cannot change its name. And let's return some message from inside. So I'm going to return new next response from next server. And this is my first API. Okay, so let's save this file, and I'm going to run my project by running npm run dev, and it will run on URL localhost colon 3000. Now I'm going to open up browser and trigger localhost colon 3000/API/users, and this get request should be automatically triggered. Get request can be tested on the browser because in get request we are not passing any kind of data to it. So in the browser you can see that I have triggered localhost colon 3000/API/users, and this is the response it has returned. So it means that our API is working fine. Now, in order to organize our APIs in Next.js recommend us few folder structure techniques. So let's say in our applications, we have authentication and users APIs, and we have the dashboard APIs that can include the settings, all the analytics, all the lists of data that we need to show. So if we create all the different folders directly in the API, that it can become messy. I want to organize the folder structure, but I don't want that folder structure to be a part of the API URL. So I can do that. So inside the API folder, I can create a new folder. Let's say all the authentication related APIs. It can be the login, sign up, users, reset password, forget password should be added within this auth folder. Now I'm going to move this users folder inside this auth folder. You will be thinking that this auth folder now will become the part of the URL, but that's not the case. This is for only organizational purpose. If I go on the browser and refresh this URL, you will see that this API is still working without adding the auth. So if we add parentheses around any folder, that gets excluded from the URLs on the backend, as well as if we create the routes on the front end in Next.js. Now I'll come back to this file when I will need to create all the get, post, patch and delete requests for the users, along with the error handling and querying data from the database. Before this, I want to connect my project with the database. For that, I'll be using MongoDB, which I can set locally in my system, but I will be using a cloud MongoDB provider from the Mongo Atlas. So you need to open up cloud.mongodb.com and sign up with your email ID. After that, once you sign up and sign in, you need to create a new organization. I think that it is going to auto generate the first organization. If it doesn't, you can go to the view all organization and create a new organization. First of all, within the organization, it will show you all the different projects. If you are new to this, it won't show anything. So these are all the projects I've already created. I'm going to create a new project for our REST API in Next.js 14. So I'm going to click on the new project button, and here I can name Next 14. Let's call it MongoDB REST API. So this is the name I've given to it. You can name anything. All right, so we should not add, actually this is optional. I'm going to click on next, and I'm going to leave it as project owner and click on create project. So it's going to take some time, and I myself want to use this API, so that's why I didn't add any email above. So now this project have been created, and inside this project I need to create a new cluster. So by default it's going to give me these options. It's 0.08 per hour dollars. I'm going to go with the free because this is just for testing. Once you want to deploy your project on production, then you might want to choose any of these options, which you can change later on as well. I'm going to leave this default name cluster 0. I'm going to check AWS. I'm going to select the nearest region where I'm sitting currently. So I'm gonna go and create deployment. So I've clicked on that. It's going to take some time and create the cluster for me. So this is the model that it has opened. First of all, it has given me this username and this password. I can generate a new password. I need to copy this password over here, which I would need later on when I will be adding it in my project. So let's copy it and paste it somewhere. I've just opened up a new tab and pasted it over here. And let's go choose a connection method actually. So set up your account. So I'm going to click on the create database users first of all, and then I'm going to click on choose a connection method. So these are all the connection method it has given to it. So I'm going to click on this driver, and first of all we need to install this package npm install MongoDB. Let's stop the project and hit enter by adding this command. And now this is the URL that we need from here. Let's click on this icon and it is going to get copied. And in our project, I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to name it .env, and let's name it mongodb _URI equals to, and this is where I will be pasting that URL which I have just copied. Okay, and after that I'm gonna go and I'm going to copy this password which I saved. Actually it already added over here. Earlier it was not already added, which we had to manually add from here. All right, so here we have this retry writes true W majority app name cluster. For now we don't need this app name cluster. I will be modifying it in my DB connection code. Okay, so let's remove that and let's save this file. Let's close it, and for now we don't need to care about this page. For now let's click on the done and let's click on the database. And first of all I'm gonna go into the network, and here currently my current IP is added over here. Means that the APIs, the data that is added in this database can be accessed from my network only. I want it to be accessed from anywhere in the world, so I can click on add IP address, allow access from anywhere. So it's going to add 0.0.0 from here, and I can click on confirm. So currently it is pending, and after a few seconds it's going to be active. So it means that everyone from around the world can access our APIs. If you want to do that on the production, you can do that. So I've just done it on this DB, and you can see that it is active. I can click on the database and I can go to the browse collection, and currently it won't show anything because we don't have any data. And I will come back to this page once we have the data. We will be performing different CRUD operations in our project. So first of all, in this project I'm going to create a new folder, and this is going to be called lib. And inside this lib I'm going to create a new file. Let's call it db.ts, and inside this file I'm going to execute the mongoose connection in order to connect my project on that MongoDB database. And the URL is I have already added in .env. So let's open up the db.ts. First of all I need to import mongoose, and I need to install the mongoose. In the terminal, I'm going to write a command npm install mongoose, hit enter. So this is going to get installed. Once it's getting installed, I can import that from mongoose. Okay, so let's get that URL from that env file. So I'm going to write mongodb _URI equals to process.env mongodb URI. So this is what I've got. After that, I'm going to write a function const connect async this URL, and then I'm going to check if the connection was already connected. Then we don't want to connect it again. So this is just for error handling. So I'm going to get connection state from mongoose dot connection dot ready state. Okay, and then I can check if the connection state is equals to 1. It means that it was already connected. I'm using tab9 AI assistant extension in my VS Code. So sometimes it suggests me the code when it sees, then I have to hit tab key on my keyboard and then it gets selected. So this is what happens just now. And after that, I can actually add the connection state equals to 2. So this is the tab9 AI assistant which is recommending, and this is right. I can hit tab. So now I can go console.log connecting ... Okay, and then return. After that, if any of these conditions get failed, it means that we need to connect to our database. So I can use mongoose.connect and then mongo URI and exclamation mark. And the reason it is showing this error, that it kind of thinking that it may be undefined, but we know that it cannot be undefined. We have added it in our project. So I can add exclamation mark after that. Okay. So after this, I can add this object, and let's add the DB name, and let's add Next.14 REST API. This is the DB name I've added, and this is the buffer command. I'm going to give it value true. Okay. We can add console.log connected. And for the try, I need to add the catch block as well in case there comes any error. So console.log error, let's show the error over here and throw the error as well. So throw new error and then the error. All right, I can actually pass the error and like this. Okay, so it is giving us few type scripting. So for now, I'm going to add this data type any over here. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this particular file. And one last thing, because we will need to access this connect function in our API files, so I need to export it from here. So export default connect. All right, so for this DB, that's pretty much it. Let's close all of these files, and I'm going to create a new folder inside this lib, and I'm going to create models for users, category, blog, and I'm going to add the relationship between these. So hit enter, and inside it, first of all, I'm going to create a new file, and I need to create the users model first of all. So Mongoose provide us built-in functions for creating the schema, like which properties the users can have, like the email, username, first name, last name, password, phone number, address. So I'm going to go with the minimal data, because once you understand how things are going, then you can add the more data as you want. Okay, so I can add import, and then let's add the schema models, and this is going to be the from Mongoose. Okay, let's create the user schema, and for creating the schema, I can use that schema class which I have imported above, and inside it I can add an object. So let's add an email, and email is going to be of type string, required true, and email should be unique. Okay, after this, I need to add the username, which I can add. So this is going to be type string, required true, unique true. And make sure you install the tab9 AI assistant. It really helps sometimes. Okay, this is what recommending me. So after that, it is automatically suggesting whether I might want to add the password, and yes, I want to add the password. So this is why it is suggesting me this. So password is like this. Okay, and after this, I'm going to add another object. So whenever this new user gets created or updated, I want to create the created at and updated at timestamps automatically created in my database. So timestamps equals to true, and make sure you add this. After that, I'm going to add the const user equals to the models dot user or model, and then I'm going to add the user, comma, and then the user schema. And after that, let's export this user, because this user we will be needing in our API route.ts file, including the db.ts, in order to query the data from the database, whether we want to store the data in the database for post, patch, or the delete, or we want to get the data from the database. So I'll come back to this folder. I'll be creating more models like the category or the blocks to add the relationship between this user schema. But first of all, let's create the APIs to create a new user in the database, to update the user, to delete the user, and to get the users from the database. So let's open up this route.ts file now. Now I'm going to modify this get request to fetch all the users exist in the database, although there are no users in the database because we haven't created any yet, and we haven't either created the post request in this file, which is going to be responsible for creating a new user. So first of all, let's modify this get API for the users. I'm going to add a try block, and inside it I'm going to write await, and I'm going to call the connect function. So before any operation that we perform to the database, then we need to call the connect function that we have created in db.ts file. So I'm going to import it from @/lib/db. This is the path of the db.ts file, and after that I can actually use users await, and then I'm going to write user. This is the name of the model which we have created, and this is going to be imported from @lib models and then the user. And if I write dot, you will see that all of these different functions are pre-built provided by Mongoose, and we can use any of these functions. Find means return all of the users that exist in the database. Find by ID, find by ID and delete, find by ID and update. So I'm going to go and select the find. It is going to return me all the users, although there are no users, but we are going to verify, and this connect function is working perfectly fine, and the connection to our database is working pretty fine. So after that, I'm going to return a response, return new next response, and then I'm going to add json.stringify users, and I can also pass the status as well. Let's call it 200. Okay, and after that, in our else not else, actually the catch block error, and inside the catch block I can return any kind of error as we want. Okay, and for the await I need to write async over here, and this error is going to get invisible now. So I'm going to add error in fetching users, and I'm going to add plus error dot message, and lastly I'm going to add the 500 status code. This error is showing some kind of message, so I'm going to add any data type over here. So after making some changes in the backend of Next.js, I try to rerun the project. So npm run dev in the terminal, so it is getting started. Now I'm going to re-trigger this route localhost /3000/API/users. So let's go over here and let's refresh this particular URL. Okay, so localhost /3000/API/users, and this is going to get triggered, and I'm going to go inside this DB, and I'm going to click on this refresh button. So let's see if it creates. Yes, this DB name gets created, Next 14 REST API, and along with that it has created this users model, although it contains nothing, and this was expected, but we have verified that our DB connection is successful, and the name of the DB with the name users is also successful. So it got this users name from this users.ts file from here by adding s after that. And if I go to the db.ts, you will see this connected string is visible. This is because of the console ninja extension which I have installed in VS Code. Now let's open up the route.ts. I'm going to close these two files, and before creating the post request for creating a new user, let's test this get API in our Postman. So you need to download the Postman. You can also use the Postman on the browser, or you can download it in your system. I've downloaded it. I've already signed up with my account, and here on the left side we can see there is a collection, environment, and the history. So you need to go to the collection, and you can create a new collection from here. If I click on the blank connection, then this folder is going to get created. Inside it we can right click and add a new folder, which I've already added. You need to add a new folder with the name users, okay? And inside the users, you need to click on the add request. Once you click on the add request, a random request is going to get generated within that folder. Okay, let me zoom in. Yeah, so now this is the first get request which I've already added, and here you can change the name of this get request, and from this drop down you need to select the get. Okay, and after that you need to write the URL of the API that needs to be triggered. So this is the same URL which we have triggered in our browser, and now let's try to trigger this API in Postman. So I'm going to click on the send, and here you can see that it has created this empty array, and it means that our DB is working and connection is successful, and these are some default headers. You don't need to care about that. Okay, so now I'm gonna go and I'm going to add a post request. So before that, actually Next.js, what happens is we use third-party services for authentication of the users, for login, sign up. It can be the clerk authentication, next auth, auth0, kind authentication, and that gives us all the information of the session of the logged in user, the signed up users. But in some cases, we need to add the same user data in our own database as well, because of the relationship between other models in our application. So I've already created the videos on all of these different topics on my personal channel. You can check that out. And the reason I'm creating the APIs for the users in order to create the users instance from the clerk, from the next auth, from the kind or auth0 in our own database as well, by triggering some kind of APIs. All right, I hope that you have got some point. Now let's go ahead and create the post API in our project now. So it is suggesting me whether I want to write this. Yes, I want to write this. And let me change the name of it to request, and this is going to be of type request. Okay, and inside it, let's add the try block and the catch block. This is required in every case actually. Okay, so now in the try block, first of all, what we need to do in the post request, we need to get the data of the user. Okay, and the data of the users can be get from the body in our Postman. If I show you over here, post user, and this is the body, and from here I will be passing this email, username and password data, which is added in our model over here, and the same data I will be passing from this Postman. Okay, so in order to receive this data in our post request, we can have const body equals to await and then the request.json, and this is going to get the data from the body. And after that, I'm going to simply connect to the database. So if the connection is already established, I've already made a check over here that it was already connected, so we don't need to care about that. It's going to take time for the reconnection to the database. So triggering this connect again in each request is not going to cause any problem in terms of performance. Okay, so now we need to create an instance for the users. The Tab9 AI Assistant extension is suggesting me a few things, so I think this is right, but I'm going to explain it step by step to you guys. So const new user equals to new user, and this is going to take the body. Okay, now I'm going to write await new user dot save. Okay, now this is going to connect to the database, creating an instance of the new user with the data we have passed from the client side, and this is going to save it in the database. And once it is going to get saved, I'm going to return a success response to the client. Currently our client is either a browser or any front-end application. It can be our current Next.js application as well, but we are calling our client as a Postman because whoever is calling the API is considered as a client. Okay, so now new next response, and this is going to give us JSON.stringify. Let's add message user is created, and after that let's pass the new user data which is created. This is actually this is the user. I had to call it new user. All right. And let's add the status as well. So over here, status is going to be the 200. Okay. Let's add some error handling in the catch block. So it is suggesting me something. Let's click on the tab, and this is going to return error in creating user along with the error message, and status is going to be the 500. So it is fine. So I'm going to save the file, and I'm going to go in the postman, and here I can actually right click, add request, and this is going to get generated. You need to change the name of it, select post from here, and now I can add /API/users. Okay, the same API is going to be responsible for the post request, and the only difference is this method, which is the post. Okay, default headers, this is the body, and let's go with the same email, username, and the password. So let's click send. All right, so it has returned message user is created along with the user data. Okay, and in order to verify whether this user is created in the database or not, I'm going to go in this, and I'm going to refresh this page. So let's see if the user is visible in the database or not. So it's loading. Yes. So our data for this user is created along with this underscore ID. This is the unique ID, automatically gets created by the MongoDB, and email, username, and password, and created at this is the timestamp because we added this timestamp equal to true in our model. So it means that our post request for the user is working pretty fine. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add API for the patch for updating the user. Let's say user is already added in the database and we want to modify its username, or we can modify its password, okay, or any other details, the phone number. So I'm going to go and create a new patch request. So this is going to be the export const patch equals to async, and this is going to be the request of type request. Let's add an arrow function. Okay, let's add the try and catch block first of all. So we remember that we need to check for errors. Okay, so inside the try block, what we need to do, we need to get the user ID which we want to update and the new data with which we want to update that user. So there are two things. Okay, so I'm going to get the data which needs to be updated from the body, just like I've got from here. Okay, and also I'm going to get the user ID directly from the body as well, although I can get the user ID from the params, from the URLs, but I'm going to get the new user name and the user ID directly from the body. So in the try block, I can get the body from the await request.json. Let's why it got here, let's remove it. Okay, so after that I'm going to get the user ID which I'm going to be passing as a body from my postman from client, and then user name. Okay, so here I'm going to get it from the body. So await connect, again connect to the database before performing anything, and I'm going to add some error handling. There might be a chance that from the client, whoever is building the front end might not pass the user ID, they might not pass the username, so we need to throw an error. We cannot proceed if the user ID is not found or user ID is invalid. Okay, and in order to check the validation of this user ID that that is automatically generated by the MongoDB, there is a way up. So I'm going to go at the top and I can add const object ID equals to the require, and this is going to be the from mongoose dot types dot object ID. Now I'm going to use this object ID to check whether the ID of the user which is being passed from the client is in correct format or not. Okay, so let's come over here, and now first of all I'm going to check if user ID or new user name does not exist. Okay, if it does not exist, then I'm going to throw an error, return a response that invalid request. I'm going to change the message So this is going to be the ID or new username not found, any message that you want to add. Okay, status is going to be 400. After this, I'm going to check the validation of the ID. So I'm going to add the types dot object ID dot is valid, and this is going to receive the user ID which we have received from the body. So currently it is saying that types not found, so we can add the types over here. So this is going to be the types from Mongoose. And now you can see that the error is gone, and inside it, if user ID is not valid, we can actually return the similar kind of message as above. So I'm simply going to copy this error message and invalid user ID. So invalid user ID. This is the message I have added. So once both of these conditions get false, it means that the user ID and username exists and the user ID is a valid user ID. Then I'm going to proceed and find the user, that if user should be existing in the database, because the user, there might be a chance user is not existing in the database. So updated user equals to await user, and I'm going to first check find one and update. So it's going to first find whether it exists in the database. If it find that, then it's going to update that with the following data. So I'm going to give it these details. Okay, so underscore ID, and this is going to first find with this ID. I'm going to give it new object ID and then the user ID. All right, and after that I'm going to pass the new username, and new equals to true. Okay, and this means that whenever the new user gets updated, it needs to return the updated user rather than the old user which was stored previously. Okay, so once that is done, I'm going to check whether the user got updated or not. There might be a chance that it returns some kind of error. Okay, so if it returns some kind of error, then I'm going to show some kind of message that there might be a chance user not found in the database. So let's return user. Actually, this is what tab 9 AI assistant suggested. So let me see, return new next response. Message user is updated, user updated, status 200, that is fine. But before that, I'm also going to return new next response, and this is going to be the JSON. Let's change the status. I'm going to change it to 400. And for the message, I'm not going to return the user. For the message, I'm going to say user not found in the database. Okay, and this is going to return if updated user have some kind of error, and this variable is this one. Okay, so now we are good to go with this API. I'm going to go in the catch block, and I'm going to return some kind of error message. Error in updating user, error.message status is going to be the 500. Okay, so I've updated that. Let's save this file, and let's go and verify what is the username. So it is the new user 22. I'm going to remove the 22 and update that. Let's go into the Postman, create a new request, change the name to update user, select patch from here, add the same URL, because URL is not changing because the URL depends upon the folder structure which we have added. Okay, and then I'm going to click on the body, and you can see that we need to pass user ID which we want to update, and user ID needs to be existing in the database. Currently this is the user ID. This at the end it is FE, so currently I don't have FE. So let's first verify if the user ID is correct or not. I'm going to click on send. So you can see that it has returned me a message that user not found in the database because this ID does not exist in the database. This is what I have returned over here. Okay, and these are the two things which I'm getting from the body. And let me copy this user ID and I'm going to paste this user ID over here. Okay, and let's new user, let's add it like new user only. Okay, the ID is correct and this is the new user. Now it should be able to patch the username. Let's click on send and user is updated, and it has returned this response, and this is the response which is being returned from here. User is updated. Let's verify it over here. You can see new user 22. Let's refresh and see if it gets updated or not. So I've refreshed, and yes, so it is updated and username equals to the new user. Now finally, for this particular API, I'm going to add a delete request. So let's go down and create a delete API. By the way, I remember some people have some issues like they wanted to write something over here in the body, but after selecting the body, you need to go and select the raw, and from this drop down, you need to select the JSON, and after that, you can add the JSON object from here. All right, so let's come back over here and let's add the delete request. So it is suggesting me this, so I'm gonna go with that. The Tab9 AI assistant is an awesome extension of VS Code. And let's again add the try and the catch block, just like we've been adding above, like this. Okay, so inside the try block, so in this delete case, earlier in the patch case, I was fetching the user ID in the body. Let me show you how we can fetch the data as a param, as a search param from the URL. Okay, let me show you what do you mean by that. If I go to the delete, you can see this is the user ID which I'm passing by adding the question mark user ID equals to the user ID, and this is how I'm passing from here. So let's come over here. In order to get that, I can use const. Let's add the search params equals to new URL and then the request dot URL. Okay, and let's add the const user ID equals to the search param user ID. So this is how we will receive the user ID from the URL. So once we do that, we need to validate if the user ID is valid or not. Actually, user ID exists or not. Okay, so we can do that. Let me copy this one, the same thing. Okay, so let's copy if, and I'm going to paste this over here. Let's remove the username, we don't need that. And now this is going to verify if user ID is actually being passed from that client or a postman to this API or not, because without this user ID, we won't be able to know which user we want to delete. Okay, and after that, we need to verify if user ID is valid or not. So Tab9 AI assistant is suggesting me by going through our patch request. So this is what it is suggesting, invalid user ID, and I think this is fine. So types object is valid user ID. So all of these error handlings are very essential to avoid any kind of problem in our backend. So I'm gonna go with this, and after this if condition, I'm going to connect with the database. Okay, so once the connection is established, I'm going to find and delete with the ID which is being received from that URL. So I'm going to write const deleted user equals to await user dot find by ID and delete. Okay, and inside it, I'm going to pass new types dot object ID and then the user ID. So this is something which I have done. So now I need to check if there is no error because of this, and I'm going to return the response. So I'm going to verify if there is no error. If there is error in it, then I'm going to user not found in the database. All right, so I have selected this. I think this is fine. And finally, I'm going to return the response that user is deleted successfully. And Tab9 AI assistant is suggesting me this: return new response, stringify user is deleted, and then returning the user here. Okay, so let's select that. I hope there won't be any error. The Tab 9 AI assistant is not going to give you a correct result always. So you need to be careful while selecting its code, which it is recommending. Okay. And inside this catch, I'm going to return the response error in deleting user. Okay, so this has been done. Let's go into the Postman, click create a new request, select delete from here, and always try to, let's first cut this one, and now let's try to trigger that send. Now it is returning me a message ID or new username not found. Actually I need to change it ID not found only. All right, so this has to be the message, yes. And now let's try to add this one. This is not correct user ID, but let's try that. User not found in the database with this ID, so ID is incorrect. Let's try to get the user, and let's copy the user ID from here, which is the correct, which exists in the database. Now I'm going to pass this particular ID, and I'm going to click on send. And user is deleted. This is the user which got deleted. This is fine. And I'm going to first verify by triggering this get request whether it returns a response, and it did not return a response. So I'm going to refresh this, and I'm going to verify whether it got empty or not. So guys, there is no result. It means that user got deleted successfully from the database, which is perfectly fine. Now we are done with this user API. I'm going to create new models for the category first of all, and I'm going to add a relationship so that user should be able to create a category, and category should belong to one user. So this is the relationship I'm going to be creating. Okay, so let's close this route.ts, and inside this models I'm going to create a new file, and this is going to be the category.ts. all right. So inside this category.ts, I'm going to be importing schema models from Mongoose. Const category schema equals to new schema. And inside it, I'm going to write the title type string, and this is going to be the required property. And after this model, I'm going to add the timestamps equals to true. And let me come back to this part, user, after that. So after this, I'm going to add the category models.category. So this is fine, whatever suggested by tab 9, and I'm going to export default category. Okay, now I'm going to add a relationship between category and the user. So whenever new category gets created, I want to store the reference of user that this user created this category. Okay, so I will be passing the user ID and the title while creating a new category from the client, or you can say a postman. So in order to add a reference, I can pass the type colon, and I can use the schema dot types dot object ID, and I can pass the ref. This is going to be the user. Okay, so this is going to add the reference to the user model, and the name of this user is referring to this model user. Okay, so I have created this model. Now let's close that. And inside this API, I have this auth. And for these categories and the blogs, let's say on the front end side, user have to log in first, and then user goes to the dashboard, and in the dashboard, user sees all the list of the blogs and the categories. So I'm going to organize my APIs in a way, and I'm going to call the after logged in page as a dashboard. You can call it anything you want. So inside the API, I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to name it. Again, whenever I add parentheses around the folder name, this is not going to be a part of the API route structure. So inside this dashboard, I'm going to add a few routes for the categories and the category ID. So inside this, I'm going to add a new folder. So let's add categories. And inside the categories, I'm going to add the route.ts file. Okay, So in this file, I'm going to create two requests, get and post. For the patch, I'm going to show you how we can create the dynamic API route to get the data from that URL for particular ID in order to delete or patch the category using an ID of the category. Okay, so now at the top, just like I imported all of these things at the top, so I'm going to import these as well in this file as well. So connect user and then the next response and then the types. We need user and we need category as well. So I'm going to import category. And the reason we need user because we want to verify the user ID which is being passed while creating a new category. Okay, so let's create export const get equals to async, and then let's add the request of type request arrow function, and inside it, just like earlier, I'm going to add try catch block. All right, so inside the try, I'm first going to get the user ID from the URL. So let's add that. So let's copy it from this delete request which we have added. So these two lines I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it over here. So this is going to give me the user ID which is being passed from the URL. So now I'm going to check if the user ID exists and I can check the user ID is valid or not directly in the same condition as well. So I can add the not user ID or types dot object ID dot is valid user ID. So if both of these conditions gets true, then I'm going to simply return a response that invalid or missing user ID. So I'm selecting this suggestion from tab 9a assistant extension and I'm going to invalid or missing user ID. And this is the message I have given to it. Okay, so after this if condition, I'm going to connect to the database and I'm going to actually get that user which is being passed. So I'm going to add const user equals to await user dot find by ID and then user ID. Okay, and so you might be thinking that why I am applying some queries for the user because I want category API or any kind of category to be seen by that user who created that category. This API should not be called by any user. And for those users who have not created this category, so if this user ID exists in the database, then I'm going to fetch that category from the DB. So if no user, then I'm simply going to return a response. So let's select that. And this is going to be user not found in the database. Let's go with that. And now I'm going to find the category with the user ID. So let's go user categories await category find and let's select that. But rather than adding directly user ID, I'm going to write new types dot object ID and then the user ID. Okay, I need to end it with the parentheses. So this is where I'm passing the user ID, matching the user ID which is stored in the database against this category. So user ID which is being passed from the client and user ID which is stored in the database. So this is where I'm checking if both are matching, then it means that the category is being fetched by that user who created that. Okay, so now stringify categories status 200. This is going to return us all those maybe categories. Yeah, all those categories. Okay, so now I'm going to show some error message, error in fetching categories. All right, so let's save this and let's go and create a new folder inside your collection. And inside this folder, I'm gonna go into this category, get categories, and we don't need to add anything in the body. So here, this is where I'm adding this API category user ID. So let's try and see what happens. So user not found in the database. Let me see if user exists in the database or not. So there is no user exists. Let me first create a new user by the previous details which we had. So send, and new user is created. New user should be fetched, and this is the ID of the user. Go to the get categories. Let's pass the correct user ID. Okay, so now let's send, and now user ID exists in the database, but there are no categories. Now it means that we are getting the correct response. Now we need to create an API post for creating a new category directly over here. So in order to create a new category, again, we need to pass the user ID. So I'm going to write export const post, and inside it, I'm simply going to add that. Let me copy it from the top. So try and paste it like this. Okay, error in creating category. Okay, so inside the try block, I'm simply going to copy these two lines because I will be getting the ID from that URL. So let's add that. And below this, I'm also going to get the data for the category, which is going to be the title of the category. Okay, so this is going to be the const title equals to await request dot JSON. Okay, so this is how I've got that. And now I need to check if the user ID exists and user ID is valid or not. So I'm gonna go up, and I can use the same if condition. So let's add that. And below this if condition, I'm going to write the connect. Up till now, you might have understood the whole process which I'm following, but there are new things coming up during this video, so stay tuned and keep watching. And now I'm going to write const user await user.find by ID. So here I'm checking if the user ID exists in the database, and if not, then I'm going to show some error message over here, just like this tab9 AI assistant is suggesting. So if no user ID exists, then user not found. And after that, I can create a new category. So this is suggesting me a new category along with the title plus the user ID, which is being passed from the URL. So I'm going to select that. This is almost fine. Okay, once that is done, let's select that await new category dot save. This is going to create a new category along with the user ID, which is being passed from the client side. When we build a front-end application, we take care about all the IDs, and automatically we don't need to manually copy paste like I'm doing over here. So this is just for elaboration purpose. Okay, so this is the save, and now I'm going to return a response that a user is successfully created. So actually category is created. Okay, so let's save this file. Let's go to the post category, and I'm going to write the title, and the user ID should be added from here, but let's go with the wrong user ID. Let's click on send, user not found, yes. And now let's copy the correct user which exists in the database. So usually in front-end application, user ID is always correct with which we have logged in. This is automatically handled. So now I'm going to paste the correct user ID. Let's send. And now category is created with the title category 1 along with the user, along with the category ID, along with created ad and updated ad for this category. Now let's go and get the categories from that DB. Let's click on send, and this is the one category which is stored in the database. Let's go and verify it from here. Let's refresh over Mongo Atlas, and it should create another model within the database, and you can see it has created this model categories, and inside it should have this category 1 title, its own ID, and the ID of the user which it belongs to, the user who created this category, and the created at and updated at for this particular category. Now I'm not going to create the patch or delete request directly in this particular file. Instead, I'm going to create a dynamic route. Means I'm going to pass the ID of the category directly after slash, not the question mark. It won't be a query param like this. It will be a dynamic part of the URL, but this value is going to be dynamic. This is not going to be fixed. Okay, so if I directly create a folder, it will be a part of the URL. Then how can I create a folder with that is going to accept the dynamic value? So the way we can add it is like within the categories, we need to create a new folder, and this has to be within the square brackets, and I can name anything inside it. Okay, now this is going to receive a dynamic value, and this is going to be a part of URL, and inside it I'm going to create the same file name route.ts, and inside this file I'm going to create a patch and the delete request for the category. So first of all, let's import the required packages. So I'm simply going to copy these things from the previous file and let's add it over here. And now let's write export const patch equals to async request arrow, and like this. Let me change it to request completely, and inside it again, as always, it's always a good practice to write error blocks. Okay, and error in fetching, error in updating category. Okay, so now in the try, I'm going to get the body, the data which needs to be updated. So it is going to be the only title, because the title is the only property exists in the category model. Okay, even if there are more properties, still we can decide how many properties we want to update. Now I can fetch the title from the body. Okay, now for updating a new category, we need to check that which category needs to be updated. For that, we need to receive the ID of the category, and I'm not going to pass the ID of the category in the body, and neither I'm going to pass it as a query param, as a search param, and instead I'm going to receive it as a dynamic value from the URL. Okay, so in order to do that, Next.js give us a way. So I can add the context colon params any, and using these params I can fetch that. So category ID equals to context params dot category. So now I've got the category ID from the URL. After that, I simply so for updating, there are three things: the category ID, the data I want to update, and I need to get the ID of the user, that who is actually trying to update that particular category. Okay, so just like I got it in the previous patch, I can receive the user ID from the search param from the URL like this. Update, this is the dynamic value for the category, and this is the user ID. Everything after question mark is become the search query param, and if it's not after the question mark, then it becomes a value for the URL. So here below it, I need to validate a lot of things here. First of all, I need to validate the category ID. If it exists and the category ID is valid, then I need to verify if user ID exists and it is valid. So first of all, it is suggesting me this. So if user ID is not found and user ID is not valid, then I'm simply going to return a response that invalid or missing user ID, just like I've been doing earlier. And after that, I need to check if the category ID is valid or not. So for that, I'm simply going to add an if condition. Let me copy this if, and I'm going to copy the category ID, paste it over here, and inside it, I'm simply going to return a response that invalid or missing category. After that, let's connect to the database. And now let's verify if the category with this ID exists in the database and user with this ID exists in the database. Both of these things are important. So let's select this, find user by ID if it exists in the database. If it does not exist in the database, I'm going to check and return a response that the user not found. Okay. And after that, if category, I can check if category exists in the database, category.find by ID, but not with this. I'm going to write another condition. So I can write the category await category dot find one. So find one, and inside it I'm going to pass underscore ID category ID, because the ID of existing model, its own model, starts with underscore in the MongoDB database, and then the user ID. Okay, so here I'm checking that the category which is stored in the database, I'm checking this ID and I'm checking this user ID as well, that the user ID which is being passed from the client, the postman, is matching with the ID of the category user value which exists in the database. So now I'm going to show the error message that if category does not exist with this user ID and the category ID, then I'm simply going to return a response that the category not found. Okay, so that is fine. Now next, let's see what we have to do now. We need to find by ID and then the update. We can do that. So we already find that above, but we can simply create that as well. But it's always a good practice to keep on checking for error handling. So updated category equals to await category dot find by ID and update. Okay, and inside it, let's bring it down. Inside it, I'm going to pass category ID, title, and new true, which is fine. This whatever it is recommending us. So let's hit enter. And now I'm going to simply return a response category is updated with this category. Okay. And for the error is fine. So let's save it. Let's verify that. So this is the category now. Cancel. And in this postman, this is the API which I'm going to test. This has to be the category ID. Let me go and send it with the wrong things. So user not found, this is the first error showing. So let's first give it a true user ID which is stored in its database. So this is the user ID. Let's put it over here. We can also update these query params by going to the params. This is the user ID. I'm going to update that. Okay, so now let's send. Category not found. It found user because we are checking user first in our API. That's why it returned users first. Then the category not found with this ID. So let's copy this ID and see that we have this name category 1. And let's put the category. This is not a query param. That's why it is not showing over here. This is a part of the URL. Okay. We have updated that, and in the body, raw JSON, this is going to be the category 1 updated, and now this has to be updated. Let's send, and now category 1 is updated. Let's go and fetch all the categories, and it has this name category 1 updated. And if we check on the database, this title should be updated. I'm going to click on this refresh, and it should be updated over here as well. And yes, it is updated, which is perfectly working fine. And let me quickly tell you that this name, the params.category, is referring to the folder name within the square brackets. Okay, and this is the purpose of the naming within these square brackets. Otherwise, we will not be able to fetch the data from the URL. But square brackets means it will be dynamic value. The category text inside it is used to fetch that dynamic value using this context.params.category. So we are done with this patch. Finally, for this particular category, I'm going to create a delete request as well. For delete, I'm also going to receive the param from the context, and request is over here. So in this delete request, I can actually copy and paste a lot of code blocks for the validations. So here, first of all, I can copy this line that is going to give me the category ID. And then I can actually, within the try block, I can actually, we don't need to get the body, because for deletion, we only need the ID. Okay. So now I can copy this. Let's add it over here, but within the try block. Okay, let's add the catch block quickly. So error any, and this is going to be the catch block, error in deleting the category, which is perfectly fine. And below this, we can copy these two validation logic for the user ID and for the category ID. If these are valid and these are existing and being passed from that client. Okay, so let's paste that after it. And after that, I can connect to the database. So we can actually check the ID if it exists in the database. So we are checking if the user who created this category is actually deleting this category. Okay. And this is the check we are performing here. So now we can check, before that, we can check if the user ID exists in the database or not. So if user ID does not exist in the database, we are simply going to return a response that user not found. Okay. And after that, we can show if the category find one, and it is going through all the file and it is suggesting us this thing. This is why I like Tab9 AI Assistant extension. So let's select that, find one, category ID, user ID. So if we have the category exist in the database with this ID which is being passed, and it has this user ID which is also matching the user ID which is being passed from our client, the postman. Okay, so after that, we can verify if the category is not found. Then we can simply return a message, this one. Okay. So we can modify this message, category not found or does not belong to the user, okay, who created that. All right. So now I can actually go ahead and delete this category. If everything is going well, then we can check if go ahead and check this if it's correctly deleted. But I can actually directly write category dot find by ID and delete, and within this I can pass the category ID, not the whole thing, like this. Okay, and we can receive it in our variable, but I don't think that is required, because if there is any error over here, it will be received over here. Yep. And now I can simply return a success response that category is deleted. Okay. So let's go into the postman. Let's go into the delete category. And these are the wrong details which I've already added. So user not found from the update params. Let's give the correct user ID, delete category, user ID. Let's select category not found or does not belongs to user. So let's get the category ID from here, delete, and let's add it over here. Let's send, and category is deleted. Let's try to fetch the category, no category found. And I'm going to quickly create the category because we have verified that. Let's send it. And this is the category ID which we have got back. And I'm quickly going to update that for later on purpose. Okay. Yeah. So this is updated, this one is updated, and I'm going to close all of these 4 requests now. Okay, so we are done with this category APIs. Now we need to create a blogs API that is going to have a little bit more relationship. Blogs can belongs to a category as well as it will belongs to a user who created blog. And later on, we can filter out the blogs based upon the category as well while getting the blogs back on the client side. Okay, so before writing the APIs, again, we need to create a new file, and I'm going to write blog.ts. Okay, and inside it, just like with other models, I can import and I can write schema models from mongoose. Okay, let's add the const blog schema equals to new schema, and here let's add the title for the blog. This is going to be the string required. This is going to be the content. Rather than content, I'm going to write the description. This is going to be the type. I'm not going to make it required. And then this is going to have a relationship with the user, schema.types and object, and then this is going to have a relationship with the category. Okay, so category, type, schema, types, and this is going to be the category name, which is going to be coming from this one, the category. Okay, so let's try to add an object, and here I can add the timestamps. And after this, let's add blog models.blog or model.blog schema, which is fine. And this is going to give me this export default blog. So we are done with creating schema for the blog, and based upon these relationships, we are going to modifying some queries because we have 2 relationships now for the blogs. So let's close these files, and here we have these categories. I'm going to create a new folder within the dashboard. Okay, so this is going to be the blogs. All right, so inside this blogs, I'm going to create a route.ts file for get and post requests, route.ts. So let's import all of those required things which we've been importing in the previous file. So I'm simply going to adding those lines, next response, connect, and this is the blog and users and the categories. So we will be needing these users and the categories for the validation purpose in this blogs API. Okay, so now let's go ahead and write the get API request for this blogs. So let's write export const and get. I don't need this context in this case. This is the arrow function, starting off with try catch as always. So like this. Okay, so now I'm going to get the search params. First of all, this is going to be from the URL. So search params new URL request.url. Okay, and I'll also keep opening that route for this category, and let's actually for this, and I need to get these 2 lines which I have been adding. So this one for the user ID over here, and then I need to have the category ID, right? And then I need to check if user ID exists and it is valid. If it is not, then I'm simply going to return a response, return. Actually, let's copy it from here, user ID, and let's paste it. And just like this user ID, I also need to check if the category ID is valid and is being added from the client. So once these 2 conditions are added, I'm going to await, connect to the database, and let's find the user ID, and then I'm going to check, just like I've been doing previously, if user ID is not existing in the database, then I'm not going to let it to fetch the blocks, because I only want the blocks to be fetched by the user who is existing and who have created those particular blocks. Okay, so now I'm going to check if the category ID actually exists in the database or not. So for that, I've already checked if the category ID exists or not. So I'm going to check if the category ID actually exists in the DB. If not, then I'm going to simply return a response. So category not found if the category is not found. Okay. So after that, I need to fetch all the blocks based upon the user ID and the category ID, but I'm not going to directly write find or find all. Later on, I will be modifying this API to add the pagination, add some sorting mechanism, some search. So from front end, if user want to fetch the data based upon the keywords, search, user want to sort the data based upon ascending, descending, or adding the pagination logic, like which page and how many items user wants to fetch, or the start date, end date, the range for the blocks based upon the timestamps which are stored for the blocks. So for considering that, I'm going to change the logic of fetching the data. So filter of type any equals to, and I'm going to write user, new type user ID, and category new type category ID. Okay, there seems some kind of error. So actually I don't need two things. So now using this filter, I can actually fetch all the blocks. So await block find filter, all the blocks based upon this user and this category will be returned. Now I can simply return to the client that these are all the blogs with the status code 200. Okay. So I think that is it. Later on, I'll come back to this API when I need to add some filtering, sorting, and all these options. So let's go over here. These are all the get blogs, and here just ignore these rest of things. I've just disabled that. I've added user ID. Click on send. So user not found. Let's go. Let's try to add all the users. Let's copy this user ID. Let's give the correct user ID. Send. Category not found. Let's get the categories. Category, get blogs, and this is the category ID, which is automatically added in these URLs. Okay. So, and you can see that this is the API/blogs. This was the API/categories. So these are the things I've added. So if I add it here, you can see that it is returning blogs with an empty array because there is no blog existing in the database yet. But if it is returning the empty array, it means that our API is working fine. And here I'll come back to this. So I'm simply going to add to do over here, which is going to help me search out that I need to come back to this line of code to add some more logic. So now let's quickly add the post requests. Okay, in this route. So const export const post, and I don't need this context here. I would need it in my patch or delete request. For that, again, I'll be creating the dynamic route for this API, just like I did it for the category. Okay, so now for the post, I will need this URL, and I would need those user ID and the category ID as well within the try block. So now, and for posting, I would also need the body, the data which needs to be added in the database for the blog. It can be the title and the description. Okay, but let's put all of these things within the try catch block for error handling. Okay, so let's add error any like this, and inside this error in fetching blogs. Okay, so after this I need to fetch the body equals to await request dot JSON, and then I can fetch the title and then the description, okay, from the body. Now I need to check if user ID exists just like above. So let me copy all of these things. So these two things and this one as well. Actually, I would need this one, the user not found, and then I would need this one as well. Okay, so let's copy all of these things from here. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to paste it. Okay, so all of these validations, if user exists, if category exists, and category found in the database and category user found in the database. So all of these error handlings are required because we want to create a blog against a category and against a user. If any of these are missing, then we won't be able to create a blog, because blogs must have to be created by a user and blog must have a category. This is the restriction we are applying, but it's up to you. You can modify it. A blog can have no category as well, but I'm modifying it in a way that it must have a category. Okay, so now we need to create a blog, and yeah, so let's close it like this, and inside it I'm going to add the title, I'm going to add the description, I'm going to pass the user ID and the category ID, which is passed from the URL from the client. Okay, and once we have created a new instance for the blog, I'm going to write await new blog save, and after that I can add blog is created blog and then the new blog. Okay, so our API is completed. I hope it's going to work. Let's come here, let's go and post a blog. So first blog description. Let's see, we have in this param, we have the user ID, and these user IDs are old. I know that it is going to give me the error, so user not found. This is what I expected. So in the get blogs, let's copy the user ID from here, post it over here, and let's copy the category ID from here. So both of these IDs for the category and user are existing in the database, which I know. Okay, so now, so let's send. Now the blog is created with this title and the description along with this relationship with the user and the category, and we can verify it over here by refreshing it, and it is going to actually add the blogs model over here in the database as well, and it has this title, description, its own ID, and the ID of user who created this blog, and the category which it belongs to. Okay, and the created ad and the updated ad for this blog, and these are going to help us sorting and based on ascending or descending or based upon the range. Okay, so we are done with this blogs one, and I'm going to create the dynamic folder now, just like I did it for the category. So I'm going to create a blog within the square bracket, and I'm going to create route.ts file. So inside it, I'm going to import everything which I've been doing in this file. So let's copy it, let's paste it. Okay, so now let's create a get request. So in this particular route.ts file, so on the front end application, there can be a page for getting the data for a single blog. Okay, and the blog ID can be existing as a dynamic param, a dynamic value in the URL. So that's why I'm creating the get single blog API in this particular dynamic route.ts file. For getting a single blog, we need to check if user ID exists, category exists, and also the blog ID exists, which will be fetched from the URL. Okay, and then if all of these conditions are validated, then based upon the user ID, category ID, I'm going to return the blog. So export const get and then the context, and yes, I would need the context because this is the dynamic route. So params colon any, okay, and the arrow function. And now const blog id equals to the context dot params dot blog. Okay, so let's add the try block. So let's add the try block and also the catch block for the error, and let's give it type any, and this is going to return us the error fetching a blog. This is going to be a single blog. Okay, so inside this try I'm going to get the search params. Let me go over here and fetch everything. Yes, so request.url, I need user ID and the category ID from that URL. Let's put it over here, and after that I need to validate the category ID and the user ID. Let's copy it from there, and I would also need the blog ID verification that this is being passed from the client side or not. Okay, so let's copy this, let's add. So let's add the blog ID, and then the blog ID over here as well. Okay, and after that, as always, let's write connect, and then I need to check if user exists in the database and category exists in the database or not. So again, I can go over there and I can copy these two blocks of code. All right, so this is going to check the existence of user ID and the category ID in the database. Now I'm going to return a single blog. So let's write const blog equals to await blog. This is going to be the model, and dot find one. Okay, and this is going to take the blog ID equals to this underscore ID, user ID, and like this. Let's remove the couple of things, category, and then the category. Actually, we don't need it directly like this. I can remove it. All right, so once we fetch that, we can actually check if there is blog exists in the database with this ID or not. So I can simply write if no blog exists, then I can simply return a response that blog not found. Okay, and once if there is no error, then I can simply return one blog. Okay, so I'm done with this API. Let's go over here, let's go into get single blog, and let's copy the user ID over here, and let's copy the category ID. I know with these user ID and the category ID I created that blog. Okay, and this has to be the blog ID. Currently I don't think this is correct, but let's try that out. So let's send, and blog not found. Actually user was found, category was found, but the blog was not found. Okay, so here let's get all the blogs, and yes, these are the blogs. Let's copy the ID of this blog. So currently it is returning the array of all the blogs, but from here I'm only returning one blog. Okay, so here let's add it as a dynamic URL, the ID of the blog which exists in the database. So on the front end side we have the list of all the blogs which we have already fetched from here by calling this API, and whenever from front end side we will be navigating to the particular blog detail page, we should have the URL containing that blog ID, or maybe in the local storage, or maybe in the local state management system, and for that we can fetch the current blog ID and pass it to this API. Okay, and then let's send, and now you can see that this is the single blog which is returned from the database. So our single fetch API, get API for fetching a single blog is working fine. Now in this file, just like I created the patch and delete requests, I need to create that over here. So let's quickly create the patch request first of all. So I'm going to first of all copy this first line. All right. So rather than get, I'm going to add the posts. Okay. So inside the posts, just like above, I can actually copy this catch block. Let's try that. Paste it over here. So error creating, actually not the post, this is the patch. Okay, error updating blog. Okay, so inside this, just like I've got the blog ID from here, I can add it over here. And inside the try block, I need to get the title and description, the updated title and description, which I want to be updated. So I can click on the try, and we can get the user ID from here. And let's put that in. And before that, I need to have the search param. Okay, search param and the title and the description from the body. Okay, in this case, for updating a blog, we don't need the category. It's just that the user have permission to update the blog. Okay, so after that, we need to check if the blog ID exists or not, which is being passed from the client side. Then we are simply going to return a message invalid or missing user ID. And also first, just like this, we can add a check for the blog ID as well. We don't have the category here, so we don't need that. So just like this, we can add the blog ID condition here. Okay, so this has been added. Now let's write the await. And after await, we can add the check for the users and the blog just like above. So let's copy these two things. I'm going to modify the category block with the blog, and this has to be the blog. So blog dot find one, and this is going to be the underscore ID, blog ID, and the user is going to be the user ID. And I'm going to add the blog. So blog not found. This is the error message I will be returning to the client. All right. So after that, we need to actually update it. So we first need to check if with the ID, and then we can actually check it updated blog await, and then blog dot find by ID and update. And then inside it, I can pass blog ID, title, description, and then the new true. Okay, once that is done, and now we are simply going to return a success response with a blog updated like this. Okay, so let's save the file. Let's go to the updated blog. Let's go to the params. We need to pass the user ID, the correct user ID. So I'm going to copy the correct user ID which is existing in the database from here. User ID, it is added over here automatically, and we need to pass the correct ID for the blog which we want to update. All right, so this has been updated. Now let's go to the body. Blog one updated, blog one description updated. And if I go over here, you can see that first blog description, I want to modify it. So let's click on the send. And now it has returned me blog updated. Let's see if it is updated in the database. Let's refresh, and the title and description of it should be updated. And yes, you can see that the title and description have this updated keyword at the end. All right, so quickly I'm going to add a delete request, and for delete request we need the same kind of stuff, the validations and all of these things. So I'm simply going to be adding it one by one. I don't want to waste your time. So this is the line which I've added, and now inside it I'm going to add this one, params blog, and here inside the try catch, let me add the try block and also the catch block. And it is going to return error in deleting the blog. And inside the try block, we can get the search param from the URL like this. And after that, we can actually check if user ID or the blog ID exists, which is coming from the client, exists in the URL or in the body. Okay, in this, you both are in the URL actually. All right, so after that, let's again do the connection, and let's again do a check for the user and then the blog, just like we have done above. So let's go over here, let's copy these two blocks of code. Let's go down. After this connect, I'm going to paste these two things. And once that is done, I can simply run this command, await blog find by ID and then the delete. Okay, and then I can actually return a response that the blog is deleted successfully with the 200 status code. All right, so that is done. Let's go over here. Let's click on the delete. We need to pass the current blog ID over here, the correct one. The blog's blog ID, this one, and the user ID. User ID exists here. So I'm simply going to add the user ID over here, and let's try to send this out. So blog is deleted. Let's verify it from the database. Okay, so no results. So blog is successfully deleted. Okay, so currently there is no blog found. I'm quickly going to add a new blog over here because I'm going to modify this particular get blogs API with different kinds of conditions, different kinds of logical things like filtering, pagination, sorting, and all of these things. So I've opened up this main route.ts file because the multiple blogs will be fetched on the main home page where you want to see all the blogs list. Okay, so this API is returning multiple blogs because we are fetching it using the find. Okay, so this is where all the filtering, all the searching, and all the pagination is going to work. So that's why I've chosen this particular API to perform all of these operations. So let's go ahead and show you that how we can add all of these things. So first of all, I'm going to add, let's say, search functionality or a search keyword. All right, so let's say on the UI you have a search bar, and when you write something on the search bar, you want to fetch all those blogs which have that keyword exist anywhere in the title of any blog. If there are 5 blogs, then if title matches in 2 blogs, only 2 blogs should be returned. So let's first fetch it from the client side, from the postman, just like we are getting it the category ID and the user ID. So I'm going to write keyword, actually search keywords for the variable equals to search param, and the value which is going to be passed, the key is going to be the keywords from the client side. And also for error handling, for any kind of type scripting, we can also add as a string for this keyword, because the keyword is going to be of type string from the client, the postman. Okay, so once we are receiving this search keyword, we added this filter object over here, which we can keep on modifying before finding the blog. Okay, so for modifying the filters, let's first verify if search keyword actually exists. Okay, and then if filter dot, and Mongoose actually provide a lot of built-in functions for aggregation, for checking and or and all of these things. So I want to check this keyword in the title and then in the description as well. Okay, so in order to do that, I can write this $sign or actually it should be an array. Okay, and then there has to be this object. So title, this is going to be receiving the regex and then the search keywords, and after that I need to pass the options, and this is going to be I. Okay, and then we need to have it for the description, colon, and then the regex, and then this option I. So this or means that the search keyword should exist either in title or in description, and this is how it is checking it. And option I means that it is case sensitive, irrespective of case, whether it found it in the lowercase or the uppercase, it should still return us the response. Okay, so now that's it. We need to add for the search keyword in the title and the description for the blogs. I'm going to go over here, and these are all the get blogs. I'm going to enable this keyword. Okay, now it should be added in the URL, you know, the keywords and then the first. All right, so now let's try to get that. And now error fetching blocks cannot use regex with strings, so there seems some kind of error. If string filter or array and then the title, actually regex, it has to be the regex, not regex. Okay, let's save it and let's send. And now you can see that it has returned us this first block because the first keyword was existing in both title and the description. So or means that either in both or in one. Okay, if I try to change it something like ABCD in the keywords, now this keyword is not found in both in first and the title and the description. So let's send this out. And you can see that blogs are empty because this keyword does not exist. So on the front end, this is how we can perform the search operation and get the data from that API. Okay, you can create new blogs and you can test that out. In fact, let's go over here and let's add the second blog and the second blog description. Let's send that out and let's get all the blogs. ABC is not found anywhere. So let's add the second. Let's send, and the second is found, which is newly created, which we have just done it. Okay, so now let's move further, and here let's get more values. We are going to get this thing. Let's remove it. It's not always required. So now search params dot get start date, and then start date, and then const end date, and then end date. Okay, so now if we have a calendar on the front end and we want to find all the blogs based upon the start date or end date, or a range between start date and end date, like return me a blog which was created between 2023 and 2024, or give me all the blogs before 2022. Okay, or any date, or even we can pass the month, day, and the year as well. Okay, so if we pass 1, it is going to be a starting value and it's going to return all the blogs starting this value up to the end date. Okay, up to the date which is current date today. Okay, so now let's go over here and we can modify this filter just like we have done it. And for modifying this, let's first verify if start date and end date both exist. It means we need to check the range. We need to return the blocks between this. So we can have filter dot created at, and then this, and then Mongoose provide GTE. So let's select the tab 9 AI assistant. GTE means that greater than equals to, LTE means that less than equals to. So start date, so return all the blocks which are greater than and equal to the start date and less than and equals to the end date. All right, and I'm going to write else if start date exists, then what happens? Okay, and end date does not exist. We don't need to check if end date does not exist, because if both exist, it will be triggered. Okay, otherwise this would not be triggered. So now I can write greater than equals to, only return all the blocks which are greater than equals to up to the current date, today. Okay, the recent date. Now else if end date exists only, then we are going to filter with lower than, less than equals to the end date. Now this is automatically be appending and we don't need to modify this. We just are modifying this filter. Okay, let's remove this to do. And now let's enable this end date now. So end date means that before this date, all the blocks should be returned. I'm going to remove this keyword. Let's remove this keyword. Let's send. So you can see that the 2 blocks are returned because all these blocks were created before this date. And this is why I've added this end date. All right. And if I change the year, let's say 2022, I hope that it's going to return empty array, because before this date, there was no block created. So let's hit send. Yes. So there was no block. So let's, for our testing purpose, let's add 2025. All right. So now this is how it is returning the response. What's next? I want to, let's say that you can also pass ascending or descending keyword from the URL from the client side, which you can test yourself. But in order to append this filter, let me quickly show you how you can update that. This is one small assignment. If you are practicing with me during this tutorial, you can also add dot sort, and then I can write the created at colon, and here I can pass ASC, not to sorted but sort. Okay, what happened here? Actually I need to remove this. And you can fetch this value from the search param and put it over here, whether it is DSC or ASC, and based upon this, we can sort this data out. Okay, this is something you can do and try yourself. Now I'm going to add the pagination. So how pagination works? We have multiple pages, 1 page, page 2, page 3, and then we have the limit that how many items needs to be visible on a particular page. So we need to find a formula. So first of all, I can receive couple of things from the client. So I can write the page equals to the search param and then the page. If there is no page returned from the client side, then I'm going to set the default page as 1. And then the limit has to be 10. Okay, limit means how many blocks needs to be visible. Now let's save this file, and here let's go down. Before actually triggering this, I'm going to actually create a formula for the skip. Skip is a built-in function provided by Mongoose. That's why we need to calculate that. So skip means that on a particular page, how many blocks needs to be skipped. So let's say there are 10 blocks on the first page. On the second block, the block will be visible from 11 to 20. On the third page, the block will be visible from 21 to 30. And similar on 11th page, blocks number will be visible from 101 to 110. Okay, so the formula is page minus 1 multiply by limit. Okay, So it is giving some kind of error. So let's see. Right-hand architecture must be of type any. So for that, I'm gonna go up. So this is giving us a string. So I can actually write parse int and wrap it around like this. Okay. So it seems it is giving some kind of error. Let's go down. Okay, so there is no error. But let me hover over it. Argument of type string is not assignable to it. So I can add any to it and any to it. And then we have this search params dot get page. Actually, I'm going to add it like this and remove it from there. Okay, so now the error is gone and we are not getting any error over here. So if page is 2, then 2 minus 1 equals to 1, then 1 multiplied by 10 equals to 10. Okay, so skip means that skip first 10 blocks and start fetching the blocks after this skip value, means after 10. So for page 2, the blocks from 11 will be returned. So if page is, let's say 3, then 3 minus 1, 2, 2 multiplied by limit, which is 10, 10 multiplied by 2 equals to 20. And that skip first 20 blocks and start returning the blocks from 21. So the 21 to 30 blocks will be returned for page number 3. So this is the formula. Now how to apply it over here? So now I can write a page and the limit property over here. Actually the limit and the skip. Okay, so first of all, skip has to be skip and then the limit has to be the limit. Okay, so this is automatically going to work. I don't have so many blogs, so I cannot test that. I don't want to waste your time. So if you have a lot of blogs you have created that, you can test that out. But if I pass page 1, limit 1, if I don't pass it, still it is going to take the default values, the 1 and the 10. Okay, but if I want to modify this, I can modify it from the front end, like this. Okay, so let's send. Okay, it is going to return the same response because I'm at the page 1 and the 10. If I change it to page 2, it should return empty array because on page 2, the block number from 11 to 20 should be returned. So we don't have that much blocks. So let's test that out. And yes, on page 2, there are no blocks. That's why it has returned empty array. So let's skip it 1. So let's send this out. All right. So there are more filtering options provided by Mongoose. You can check out the documentation of Mongoose. And if you want to learn more about the filtering options and all of these things, then yeah, you can go to the docs. And on my personal channel, I've created a long tutorials on Node Express MongoDB where I've talked about all the aggregations as well for filtering the data out from the database using Mongoose. Okay. So let's save it now. Next thing, we are done with all of these APIs. Now I want to talk about middlewares, how we can protect over backend, how we can add the middlewares for logging, for intermediate error handling for our APIs. So let's talk about that. We don't need to do anything in these files. Next thing, I'm gonna create a new folders, but before that, let's create a file which is given by Next.js. We cannot change its name. And middleware file runs before every request. On the front end side, before every route. On the back end, before every API request. Okay, so this is something we can utilize to add further middlewares in order for logging, error handling, or other API protection rules. So I can start off writing by importing this next response from next server. And after that, I can export const config equals to, and I can add the matcher that it should match and trigger in all the files exist inside this API folder. Okay, and after that I can write export default function middleware request request. Okay, and inside it I can simply return next response dot next for now. Okay, and if I go ahead and try this out, get users, and it's still working, and that is fine because I've not added any checks inside it. So before that, let's go ahead and create a new folder over here, and that is going to be the middlewares. Actually, this is the file. I have to create middlewares. This has been created. I'm going to delete that. And now let's create a folder, middlewares, and inside it I'm going to create another folder API. This is just for organizational purpose because I want to separate out the middleware logics for the APIs, and if later on I need to add front end, I can add a client folder inside middlewares folder. So now inside the API I'm going to create auth middleware, and I can name anything, auth middleware .ts. Okay, so auth middleware is going to be checking that if the bearer token from the client side, from the postman, is passed or not. If it is not passed, then I'm going to throw an unauthorized error for all of these APIs, and I'm going to show you the different checks that we can have. Like the for users I can keep it public, and for categories and the blocks I can keep it protected until and unless the bearer token is not passed. There are a lot of token types. Like if I go to this drop down auth type, and you can see that this is the bearer token, basic auth, JWT, OAuth. In Next.js, usually when we use the third party services like the Next.auth, auth.js, or the clerk authentication, kind authentication, auth0, they provide session ID, client ID, and using that we can process our middleware to protect our APIs as well as front end routes. In every my video of clerk authentication, auth0, kind auth, next auth, which I've created on my personal channel, I have shown that how we can protect our API routes using their provided method, using the clerk provided method, next auth provided method, and other services provided method. So but this video here in this function, I'm going to have a simple logic that in case you are not using third party services, still you want to protect your routes based upon the bearer token or any other token type or simple boolean value, you can do that. How you can do that in the middleware file. So this is what I want to add here. So now let's first of all add const. This is not a real bearer token. I'm not creating any login sign up pages on the front end or the client side, but this is going to be, I'm mimicking the behavior of the real bearer token. If it exists, real or false, you can check that out. Then we need to protect our routes. If it does not exist, we are going to not allowed user to access these APIs. So now let's create this utility function first of all. So this is the token any arrow function, and inside it let's give it valid token. You can validate it based upon your own rules which you are using. You can use JWT verification, encrypt, bcrypt, whatever you want, and I'm just checking that it is already valid, but it should exist actually coming from the client side. Now I can check if not valid token or token does not exist, then I'm simply going to return false. If it is not validated or the token does not exist, then I'm simply going to return false, otherwise return true. Okay, so now I have this function auth middleware request and then the response. Let's use only request, a return type any, and here I can write token equals to request.headers.get, and from the client side, whenever we pass these kinds of bearer token, let's say I can add over here, this property will be added over here, authorization bearer, like this. Okay, so from the client side we use Axios or fetch, and in the headers on the client side, we can actually pass these values. So currently let's remove it. And now I can get the bearer token from the authorization property, and this is going to be the bearer and then space, then actual token. So I can split that out. So split with an empty space and the second value from that splitted array. Okay, and then I'm going to return is valid colon validate token. This is going to be the validate. This is what I'm going to be using. So validate, and I'm going to pass the token. Okay, this has to be an object actually, like this. Okay, so this will be triggered by this file, which I'm just going to import. And when this is going to be triggered, this is going to get the authorization bearer token by splitting that out as a second value. And this token is going to be passed to this utility function, and this is going to validate if it's true or false, or token exists or not. Based upon that, it is returning true or false. Now let's use this auth middleware in our middleware.ts file. So let's first of all import that. Instead, we can directly use that. It will be automatically imported above. Okay, so now let's use const auth result equals to auth middleware from .middleware. As you can see, there is automatically imported, and then I can pass request to it. Okay, this is the request I have passed to it, and from this request it is going to fetch out the headers. Once it is going to be passed, that function is going to return me is valid, whether it's true or false. Now I can actually check if auth result dot is valid, then I'm going to return the response, new next response stringify unauthorized. If it is not is valid, means if it returns false, then it is not, it is going to return us unauthorized. Otherwise, it is going to give me access to all the APIs. And along with this, I can also pass and checks as well. Let's say request.url. This has to be the request.url dot includes and then /API/blogs. Okay, so actually this is a request. All right, so it means that this has to, if it is invalid or this is blogs, then I'm going to return unauthorized. So I'm always unauthorizing. I'm making a check that this token is applicable only with blogs. Okay, and this validation is not applicable with the other APIs like the categories or the users. So for now, let's go over here. Let's try to fetch the users. You can see that I'm able to fetch the users because this validation for unauthorization is only being applicable on these blogs. Okay, if I go to the blogs and try to fetch the blogs now, you can see that this middleware executes before every API request that is going to happen. All the API requests within these blocks, because I've added the checks for the blocks. For now, I'm just going to show you that this is how you can add checks. You can add the blogs / something like that. You can be specific which API should be added along with this bearer token validation. So for now, I'm just going to remove this thing. So now it is applicable for all the API requests, irrespective whether it's user, whether it's categories or the blogs. Okay, now if I go to the get users, send, and now it is unauthorized. Now how to make it authorized? Let's pass this bearer token in the headers, then it's going to return me true. Okay, so let's go and select the bearer token from here, and I'm going to use bearer. And then this is not a real token. I'm just mimicking the behavior. Usually bearer token is a combination of this kind of thing. Now I've passed this bearer token. Now let's send. Now you can see that I'm able to fetch the value because I'm passing the bearer token for posts as well, for update, for get categories. Let's try to get the categories unauthorized. Let's pass the bearer token like this. Now I'm able to get the categories from the database. Okay, now this middleware is running before every API request. This is what I'm trying to explain you guys. Now let's say that I want to add multiple middlewares for logging. I want to log some information in my database, that which API request was triggered and what was the method type for that API. Okay, so now let's go and in the API folder, and I'm going to actually not the folder, the file, and I'm going to add log middleware.ts. Okay, and in this particular middleware, I'm simply going to export function log middleware request of type request. Okay, and this is going to simply return the response colon request request dot method, append it with request dot URL. Okay, this is the simple logging, and we can modify this logging operations by our own data, all these things. And now let's log the information before every API request that is going to be triggered. Let's come inside this, and I want this logging information for only blogs API. And just like I have added this condition, I can add this condition for logging the information for only blogs API. So for that, I can actually add request dot URL dot includes /API /blogs. So it is only going to work with this blog API. If you want, you can remove this condition as well. So now const log result equals to log middleware. This has been imported, and let's pass the request to it. And now I can simply log the result by log result dot response. All right, so let's save it. Now let's trigger that out. This is only going to work for blogs, so let's get the blogs. Let's send unauthorized. Let's add the bearer token, and let's add the value. Send. Now I'm able to fetch the blogs. Let's go over here, and now you can see that this is the URL got triggered. This is what it printed. This is the method type. This is the URL it printed, and we can add more information. And this is the thing that it has printed. Actually, I think this is the one. Okay, yeah. So, and we can modify this one, and let's append yes to it. Okay, and see which URL is this. Let's hit send, and let's come here, and yes, this is the URL, and we have this yes appended after that. So this is how it is working, and we can add as much middleware as we want. And if you want to remove this, you can remove it and add some more conditions as well. And our routing is protected, our APIs are protected, and our logging middleware is working fine. So we are done with creating APIs. Now it's time to deploy our Next.js application with this whole backend of the REST API on the Vercel. So let's go ahead. But before that, I'm going to first verify if there are no issues in my code, because Vercel run this command npm run build. So before deploying that, I'm going to verify that if there is no error here, then there won't be any error on the Vercel. Usually there is no error on Vercel, but let's verify that. So it's currently building that. Till now, if you have learned something new, if you have liked my tutorial, I would request you guys to check my YouTube channel from the description of this video, and do subscribe my channel as well. So I think there is no error. Yes, there is no error. Now I'm going to open up the GitHub, and I'm going to deploy my application on Vercel. So first of all, let's go ahead on the GitHub and create a new repository. and I'm going to give it a name, Next 14 REST APIs. Yes, and I'm going to leave it public because you will get the link of this repository from the description of this video, and do give it a star, guys. So let's not add readme, let's leave it by default. Let's click on the create repository. So it's going to get created, and first of all I'm going to open up this gitignore, and I'm going to add .env file over here. I don't want to put env here. I will manually be adding this MongoDB URL in my Vercel environment. Okay, so now let's add git status. These are all the changes, and I'm going to write git add dot. After that, I need to commit that out. So let's copy this commit command. Let's add over here, and this is committed, and I'm going to copy all of these 3 commands at once. So I'm going to add it over here, and let's hit enter. So this is pushed. Let's restart. Okay, the page is reloaded, and these are all the changes I have just pushed. Okay, and there is no env file. This is perfectly fine. Now I'm going to open up vercel.com, and I'm going to add a new project. And these are all the repositories which I have added in my account. I've already added my account in Vercel. So now let's go and import this particular repository. And before clicking on deploy, let's go to the environment variable, and I'm going to open up env. Let's copy everything from here, and I'm going to paste it directly here. All right. So now let's click on deploy. Okay, so it's going to take some time in order to deploy that, so let's wait for it. Alright guys, so our project is deployed. You can see congratulations, and it is showing the default UI on the front end. This is the default UI when we create a new Next.js project, although I did not touch the front end part of Next.js. So, but still it is showing the default UI from the home page. I'm gonna go and continue to the dashboard, and it is going to give me the URL where our app is deployed. This is the URL. Okay, I'm going to open this up, and our app is deployed. Now let's copy this base URL. Earlier we were using localhost 3000, and currently we have this one, and I'm going to add it rather than localhost 3000. Okay, and let's try to trigger this. Currently it's showing unauthorized. It means APIs are working, that's why it is showing unauthorized, but we need to pass the bearer token. So let's go and let's get all the blogs. Okay, so but I'm going to replace localhost 3000 with the deployed instance that we have, the Next 14 REST API. And now let's see, because the database is same, still it should return the same data which was returning on the local host. So let's hit enter. It is taking some time because it is a deployed instance. So let's see. And now guys, you can see that it has returned me this data with this deployed URL. So our deployment is working, and we are passing bearer token. Earlier on the browser, we had this unauthorized. Let's try to get the users as well, because we are passing the bearer as well. So I'm going to replace the base URL with the deployed version. Okay, and let's hit send. And now you can see that it is not throwing unauthorized error. In fact, it is giving us this URL, the data in the JSON. All right, guys. So I hope that you have learned something new from this video. If you have liked my video, let me know in the comments of this video. And again, guys, do check out my YouTube channel as well for more videos on Next.js. So hopefully I will try to create more videos on freeCodeCamp, and I would like to thank freeCodeCamp for giving me the opportunity to create a tutorial for this channel. So guys, thank you so much for watching. See you.